Welcome to our channel Behind My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Most people dream of being rich and famous with a happy family, a prestigious job, and a huge villa. Achieving these dreams needs patience and hard work. I'm not interested in the meaning or value of a job itself. The only thing I care about is the salary it pays. I want my dream job to pay a high salary. That's all I ask. My name is Raji, and I am 21 years old. I have had only one dream my whole life: to be rich and to have a prestigious, high paying job. It has been my dream since I was a boy because I don't want to waste my time in a low paying job. I searched the newspaper for jobs with a good salary, any kind of job. One day, I found a catchy advertisement: elderly companion needed. The caregiver salary was quite good, and it seemed like an easy job, so I went to the interview. The interview session made me feel a little uneasy. I tried to remain calm by focusing on that nice salary the job paid. The interviewer was an old man, who even introduced me to his sons. He said that I have to take care of their invalid father, feeding him, changing his bed sheets, and giving him his medications. They were about to show me a list of the job duties, but I interrupted them before they could finish their sales spiel. "I'll take it," I stated simply and directly. They stood there with their mouths opened and then shrugged their shoulders. Okay, I got the job. So I lived there with their father, I'll call him the old man, in his villa. I sometimes felt that there was someone else there with us, but maybe I was just seeing shadows. The man himself was somewhat queer. I would sometimes wake up to find him looking at me intently and smiling strangely. One early morning at like 3 a.m., I heard a noise and went to his room, only to find his bed empty. Strange. Then suddenly, I sensed someone behind me, and I turned around quickly to see him holding a knife. He tried to attack me, but I managed to fend him off and pushed him away. Then I dashed out of the villa. I never came back. I told myself I didn't want to die on my dream job. Failing at my first attempt to find my dream job didn't stop me from trying again. I soon found a new one, which was an assistant clothes designer. The salary was even better than the last job. I went to the interview, and the interviewer, the clothes designer himself, seemed a little odd. I couldn't discern his, her, its gender because it had long hair and a soft voice, but on balance, I decided to call it a man. I told myself that I shouldn't judge people from their appearance, so I started my new job as his assistant. I told him that I was enthusiastic about the job, but I got the heebie-jeebies when he suddenly took my hand in his and just held it while looking at me. Was this guy homosexual? I wondered. I decided to ignore his odd behavior. It's all about the salary, you know. I have to say that he was very good at his work, and I met a lot of celebrities while working in his workshop. One day, our workload was particularly heavy due to an international festival in town. I was tidying up a new dress when he suddenly put his hand on the small of my back and asked me if I want to lie down with him. That heebie-jeebies feeling suddenly returned, and I pushed him away and dashed out the door while shouting back, "I suspected you might try that from the beginning, but I ignored my premonitions. Bye!" He called after me and said that I didn't know what I was missing, but I shouted back that I would live without it. Back to the want ads to look for another dream job. I searched for a few months before coming upon another job as a coffee bean collector. The salary was even better than the last job, so I was perfectly happy with that. I went to the interview. This time, the interviewer seemed to be a normal, welcoming kind of guy. "I hope you are ready to take this job," he said. "I surely am. I'm enthusiastic about it," I said. He explained the job duties. I had to collect coffee beans, wash and clean them, and put them in sacks for transporting. He said that I had to sign a legal contract that I couldn't break or get out of before its end date. "I am totally ready," I said. "Where do I sign?" He smiled kindly and escorted me to his office. I signed the contract without even reading it. It's all about the salary, you know. I couldn't wait to start putting away that high salary so I could start getting rich. He led me to the work area. While walking, I was imagining gently picking those fragrant coffee beans in those sunny, wide open fields. Boy, was I surprised when we stopped where a small herd of elephants were standing idly, swinging their tails and trunks back and forth. Some laborers were standing beside them, knee-deep in elephant poop and hand-picking coffee beans out of it and putting the beans into sacks. I turned back to look at the hiring interviewer. He was guffawing and said, "Sorry, pal, you signed the contract. Too late to back out now." Then he walked away, still laughing. Please, God, don't let this be my dream job.
Hi, I'm Kyle and I'm 24 years old. I've been a weightlifter for over 10 years. This sport runs in my blood. I used to follow the international players and imagine myself in their place. I had a fervent dream of becoming the world weightlifting champion. I've been working towards this goal ever since I was 13 years old. I've trained 5 hours a day for years with the ultimate goal of competing in the Olympic Games. I craved the fame and recognition that would grant me. One of my first early successes was winning a junior championship while representing my city. They called me the Tank due to my impressive strength. All the people around me foresaw a bright future for me. Title after title, contest after contest, my victories inevitably led me to the national championship. The winner of that championship would represent our country in the Olympics. I underwent intensive training to the exclusion of all else. I was so focused. My manager was confident that I could easily win the world championship, and I didn't want to disappoint him. The competition was fierce. I faced numerous fierce competitors, but I defeated them all and reached the final round. The only player left to challenge me was last year's champion, who had never lost a contest. The competition gradually got harder and harder until we reached the point where one of us had to break the world record to beat the other. A crucial tipping point came when I needed to lift a weight that was heavier than I had ever attempted before. There was danger in doing so, and my manager cautioned me to consider if it was worth the risk of serious injury to continue. But I was too driven to heed his warning. I had trained and waited too long for this moment. There's no turning back now, so I bent down and grasped the barbell. I sucked in a deep breath and lifted and heaved with all my might. As soon as I had lifted the weight above my head, I knew immediately that I had overestimated myself. After only a fraction of a second, I felt an excruciating pain in my backbone. A snap. I collapsed under the weight of the barbell and fell flat to the floor with the barbell across my chest pinning me down. The pain in my back was unbearable. I felt as if I were dying. I was taken to the hospital where a doctor diagnosed that I had broken my back at the 4th and 5th vertebrae and that I would never walk again. I tried to kill myself on several occasions, not wanting to live my remaining life in a wheelchair. All my friends, and even my coach, gradually began avoiding me, not wanting to be associated with a loser and a cripple. My mom was the only person who stood by my side and never gave up on me. She helped me with my rehabilitation. Initially, the simple act of lifting a teaspoon felt like I was trying to lift a mountain. After 6 months of intensive physical therapy, a miracle happened. I was able to stand erect for a few seconds. 3 months later, I was able to walk slowly. I began a light training program to get back to my dream. Everybody was shocked that I was determined and foolhardy enough to try to do it all again, but I intended to achieve my dream even if it killed me, which it might very likely do. 2 years later, the scene cuts to Kyle walking out onto the Olympics weightlifting stage to the cheering of thousands of people.
I am Matthew, 21 years old, and I must tell you something. I am a madman. I need treatment. But what kind of treatment is there for my kind of madness? You see before you a man with torn clothes who speaks to himself all the time. I used to be a doctor, but I left medicine to pursue aromatology. In case you were wondering, aromatology is the study of fragrances, such as scents of flowers and how they affect people. Let me tell you my story. My parents were very proud of me because I was intelligent, well-known, and well-respected at my university. I earned high marks in all my courses. Dad wanted me to join the College of Medicine because he had always dreamed of my becoming a doctor, and I felt that I couldn't deny him that. My parents did their best to make me happy and to help me achieve Dad's dream. But to be honest with you, medicine, engineering, the arts, none of these interested me at all. They weren't my dream. I loved flowers and their fragrances, like rose and honeysuckle. I would extract fragrances from them and give them as gifts to my friends and family. They all really enjoyed these aromatic gifts. My dilemma was that I had to find a way to tell Dad that I would rather study botany, plants, and aromacology, fragrances, over medicine any day. I knew he would think that I was crazy to give up the lofty study of medicine to work with flowers, but what can I say? I have loved flowers and fragrances ever since I was a youngster. I have always been fascinated by exotic flowers and scents. Learning how to make fragrances from flowers required me to meet with a lot of people who worked in this field. One day, I had to face the moment I had been dreading because my parents had arranged a large social gathering to celebrate my success at the university and my joining the College of Medicine. Dad asked me to tell everyone about my ambitions as a doctor. I suddenly knew that the moment had come when I needed to make my startling announcement to my parents. I told the audience I had decided that being a doctor was not for me and that I was going to change my field of study. Dad looked at me with an astonished look on his face, and then he began laughing. He thought I was joking. Then I turned to him and said, "Dad, I'm not joking. I'm serious. I want to study flowers and fragrances, similar to the types of gifts I've given you before." The audience suddenly got very quiet. They could sense that this was an epiphany for my parents. The embarrassment and shock in the air was palpable. Dad looked at me and said with an affected smile, "Matthew, you were born to be a doctor. Forget all this nonsense about silly flowers." A little testily, I said, "Dad, extracting fragrances from flowers is not silly." Dad said, "Bah, forget about that." The party spirit was somewhat subdued after this testy exchange. Regardless, in deference to Dad, I began studying medicine, but most of my energy and attention was directed towards flowers and their fragrances. Sometimes I would spend time with my medical friends, and sometimes with my aromacology friends that I had met earlier. I spent my first year in medical college earning high marks as usual, but I had no passion for it. It neither excited nor interested me. There came a day when I had had my fill of medical studies and just couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to leave the College of Medicine to pursue my true passion, flowers and fragrances. When I told Dad of my decision, he was very upset, cursing at me and accusing me of being mad, insane, crazy. I repeated that I had zero interest in medicine and stated that the true madness was sticking with a field that I really didn't like at all. I moved away from home and stayed with a friend for a while before finally renting and moving into a small apartment. I faced a lot of obstacles in the beginning, but I didn't give up. I set up an arboretum by planting some flowers and nurturing them. I was working on a rare kind of fragrance extracted from a variety of flowers. I had to travel to obtain these specimens. My product fragrances weren't successful at first, but I persisted. Initially, I offered my fragrance products to various factories, but all refused my offer. So I continued in my studies. I worked in many different places. In the evenings, I would spend all my free time doing my experiments. Over time, I grew more proficient in producing unique fragrances. Then one day, I received a phone call from a famous factory. The factory owner told me that he might be interested in working with me, so I sent him some samples of my work, and they delighted him. And I was delighted that he was delighted. Thus began the lucrative stage of my new endeavor. I started earning a decent income and achieved a modicum of success in the end. After a while, I called Dad and asked him to forgive me, and he did, finally realizing that my passions were not necessarily his passions, and that I must pursue what I enjoyed the most. I have my own factory now. I achieved my dream in the end. My advice to you, the readers, is never to give up when pursuing your dreams. With persistence, you will be successful one day. So what do you think? Was I a madman to give up medicine for aromacology? Was I a madman to give up medicine for aromacology?